Welcome back to the Toxic Romance Cycle series. This is part 4, and we are continuing our exploration of Phase 1 reattachment. If you haven't already, be sure to download my free relationship reflection workbook. It'll help you explore how each of these phases are impacting your life. All right, so let's look at how Phase 1 is showing up for you mentally. You feel lighter, like a heavy fog has lifted. You feel like you have your brain back. Focus, memory, and concentration. So when you're in like survival mode, your brain is not working like it normally does, okay? That prefrontal cortex is not working like it normally does. And so it's really hard to focus, it's hard to remember things, it's hard to concentrate. But at this phase, you feel like you have your brain back. So you almost feel like you can plan again, weekend trips, holidays, future goals. You really don't feel like you're just in survival. You feel like you can actually explore and dream about the future. And there is just this sense of like optimism and renewed hope at this phase. So because he's on his best behavior, you sort of like rewrite the story in your head to support this new version of him. So, something like, he wasn't neglecting me, he was just overwhelmed. I should have been more patient. So, you just experienced 3 weeks of him emotionally withdrawing from you. And now you guys are back together. You're back on good terms, sorry. Um, and everything feels safe again. You feel reconnected to each other again. And instead of viewing his destructive behavior and the harm that behavior has on you from a lens of reality, you're viewing it from a lens of potential. You're reframing his behavior. You justify, excuse, and reframe harmful behavior. You gaslight and second guess what you were so hurt about and how you reacted to it. So maybe he betrayed your trust, he violated your trust somehow, and that's how this whole conflict sort of came about. And now that you're back together and everything feels good again, and you feel reconnected and attached to one another again, you sort of gaslight yourself about like how you overreacted and you shouldn't have gotten that upset about things, and he is really sorry and he never really meant it and he has been changing. And so you really sort of suppress what you're actually feeling in order to view him through this lens of potential. You interpret small gestures as signs of deep transformation. He sent me a song today. I think he's finally learning how to love me. You daydream more than you reflect. You reread old texts from him and only feel the good again. The pain gets blurry. And isn't that so true when we put back on those rose-colored glasses? It's almost like our brain no longer remembers all the harm that had just happened to us maybe just a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden the pain gets really blurry, and all we can remember are sort of is like this highlight reel of our relationship, all the good times and how much fun we have together and how we make such a good team. That's kind of like all we can focus on at this phase. All right, so how does this show up for us spiritually? It feels like God is healing what was broken. So you interpret his return as a spiritual confirmation God is answering your prayers. He prayed with me last night. That has to be God. Mm, 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 mm. When you are a Christian woman going through this cycle, if you are a Christian woman and you are in an emotionally abusive relationship, if you experience covert abuse from your partner, it can be very, very, very confusing on a spiritual level, especially when you reconnect with them after a period of conflict or emotional separation or disconnection. You begin to spiritualize your survival. Maybe God was refining us. Maybe this is part of our testimony. The enemy tried to break us, but look, we're still here. Sis, he cheated on you, okay? He just spent a significant amount of money that impacted your entire household. Like, The way that we reframe these things is absolutely insane. It is and can be so confusing when we really, really feel like God wants us to stay with this person, even though they continue to make decisions that impact your life and maybe the lives of your children very, very negatively. You stop seeking spiritual clarity and instead try to protect what feels ordained. You confuse emotional relief with divine restoration. This must be God bringing us back together. I can feel his peace. You misinterpret concepts like grace, mercy, unconditional love, and forgiveness. If you have experienced any sort of religious abuse in your childhood, things like grace, mercy, unconditional love, forgiveness, these concepts can be very, very confusing. And it's very easy to conflate these things with being trauma bonded to somebody because you think that, well, love means that I have to forgive no matter what. Love is unconditional. God gives me grace. I have to have grace for this other person. And in a healthy relationship, absolutely, of course. But we're not talking about a healthy relationship. We're talking about an abusive relationship. We're talking about somebody who takes advantage of your kindness, who knows that no matter what they do, you're going to forgive them. And so they do whatever they want because they don't respect you. That is not what unconditional love is. Unconditional love in an abusive context is not love, and it's not safe. You're no longer praying for God's will. You avoid praying about whether to stay because you already want the answer to be yes. You interpret his improvements as a sign. You pull away from God because the crisis is over. In phase 4, when the rug has been pulled from under your feet and you feel so destabilized in your life, and you don't know up from down, you're emotionally exhausted and dysregulated, you are probably the most connected to God at that point. Like you are leaning on him the most. You're maybe reading the Bible more. You're praying to him more. You're speaking to him more. You're asking for an answer and for a pathway, and for hope. You're praying for your partner. You're praying for the relationship. And when you reconnect to your partner, you see that as a sign of God approving the relationship. When in reality, you're trauma bonded to this person, your conscience is actually distorted. So you feel a bunch of guilt that you shouldn't feel guilt for, like setting healthy boundaries. Um, and so, because you're reattached to him and everything is safe again, maybe you pull away from God because you don't really need him that much anymore. Your prayer was sort of answered, and you reframe being back together with this person as a sign from God that you should stay with this person. When in reality, God does not want you to stay in a relationship with a person who continues to abuse you emotionally, mentally, spiritually, sexually, and possibly even physically. That is not God's will for you, and that is not love. I don't know who needs to hear that, but that is not love. All right, so how does phase 1 show up for us sexually? And this topic in general can be pretty intense, but I'm going to try my best to go through this as graciously as possible. So, at this phase, you feel open again. You feel desired, closeness returns, and it feels more than touch. It feels like love. Sex feels tender, it feels connected, and maybe even passionate again. He kisses your forehead before undressing you. He takes his time and he tells you that you're beautiful. So, sex no longer feels performative. It no longer feels like a chore, where maybe it may feel that way in the later 3 phases. But at this phase, it really does feel passionate and it feels like love again. You feel safe enough to open up again. Your body unclenches, your stomach isn't tight anymore. You're not mentally rehearsing how to say no. You want to say yes. When you are in a covertly abusive relationship, there are parts of you that want to say yes, and a lot of time there are parts of you that want to say no because you don't really feel safe. We know that in order for true intimacy to be present in a relationship, we have to have emotional intimacy. If you are in a relationship with a partner who is persistently neglecting your needs, avoids dealing with conflict, and is emotionally abusive, there is no such thing as emotional intimacy, and therefore, there can be no such thing as true intimacy. It feels safe to let your guard down and to fully embrace the moment. You may feel more confident in initiating again because his energy is softer, more patient, and more emotionally available. So maybe you're kissing him first, you're leaning into the intimacy instead of bracing against it. For some women, it's not sex. So maybe if you've been with your partner for like 20, 30, 40 years plus, and sex isn't really a part of your dynamic anymore, or like intercourse is not a part of your dynamic anymore, it's the affection that feels intimate again. So maybe you're cuddling on the couch, he's holding your hand in public, he touches your lower back when you're in the kitchen, you're lingering in hugs, forehead kisses, um, all that sort of a thing. So I wrote here that sex is the counterfeit for emotional intimacy, and that is the reality of being in this cycle with another person. There is no true emotional intimacy, as I just said. And so sex is the closest thing that feels like emotional intimacy. It feels really close. And it is really the counterfeit. It's the exchange. Instead of having true vulnerability and accountability and communication and trust and safety, we have sexual closeness. And it is really the counterfeit for emotional intimacy. All right, socially. So, how does phase one reattachment show up for us socially? So, you are re entering the world again, quietly and carefully. You begin sharing that things are better now, but only with people who you trust not to judge you. You say, "We're in a better place," without offering details. And the truth is that you don't actually have details because being on better terms together is all performative on his part, at least. It is not transformative. He has not done anything to really change his behavior. He's just putting on an act to keep you happy and to bring the relationship back to a good place again. You pull back entirely, not wanting to explain your decision to reconnect. People in your life who have been watching this relationship unfold for the amount of years that it has, some may ask questions, and most of them probably don't ask questions anymore because they're so used to you guys being on again and off again. You stop talking to friends who were supportive when you were hurting. There are certain people that you will go to when your world is falling apart that you trust to have your back. But because you share certain details with them about your partner, they're gonna lovingly hold you accountable when you do get back together with them. And so, to avoid that accountability, you don't really talk to them about getting back together. You sort of avoid them as much as possible. You feel ashamed, but also protective of the way that people perceive him. So he just cheated on you again. He just relapsed on drugs again. He just completely embarrassed you, ditched you, whatever he did to you again, which is incredibly shameful. And it's so embarrassing that you're still with him. But you're also very protective of the way that people perceive him. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that when you're in a toxic relationship, when you are in a covertly abusive relationship, we really take on the role of protecting the character and the perception of our partner. We're very, very careful. We've been trained by them to be very careful of how people perceive them. That's why we're always making excuses for them. That's why we're always covering up for them. You start hiding again, not because you're in pain, but because you're trying to protect the hope. And so you start to avoid people who may bring reality to you, who may ask questions. Has he really changed? What is he even doing to change? He said he's sorry, but like, what is he actually doing about it? You want to avoid those types of people and those types of questions because you really need to protect that hope that you're holding on to. You start presenting a picture of progress. On the outside, everything seems picture perfect. You try to convince your loved ones that you're okay now and everything is better, but the truth is, no one actually believes you. And you need to know that. Like, you may tell everyone that everything's okay. Maybe you're still wearing the engagement ring that he gave you, even though he just cheated on you. Um, or you're showing up to the whatever event with him. Everybody knows, and everybody knows that you're not okay. The people who love you are concerned about you and they want you to be safe. And they know that everything's not okay. As much as you try to convince it, as much as you share the social media photos and you put on a happy face and you smile, everybody knows that inside you are still broken. You are still hurting. You can cover it up all you want, but I know that hurt and that pain is still very much present because nothing has actually been done to resolve those issues. They just get swept under the rug just like everything else. You feel alone in your joy, unsure of who will understand or approve. The people who love you can't forgive him as easily as you can. They can't celebrate his progress. They can't help but be worried about you and are tired of seeing you get hurt over and over and over and over again. The people in your life who love you, who you hide from, who you don't tell all the details to, are so worried about you because they know you're not okay. They have watched you over the years. They have watched the light in your eyes dim. They have watched you go from a bubbly, happy, strong, confident woman to a person that they can hardly recognize anymore. And the tears that you hold right behind your eyes, they can see it. They know that you're not okay, but they love you and they want to stay in your life. And that's why some of them don't say anything anymore. You start presenting a picture of progress. On the outside, everything seems picture perfect. You try to convince your loved ones that you're okay now and everything is better. It's like, sis, you just called me. I was just on the phone with you a few weeks ago. You were breaking down, crying, telling me all the things that he did to you. You were telling me stuff that I didn't even know. And now you expect me to just be okay with him again, to trust you with him again. That's a hard thing for your friends and family to do. And trust me, I've been on your side of it. I've been on their side of it. I know it's a very difficult place to be in, but it is a very, very, very lonely place when you reconnect with your partner after they have just hurt you and done something else to violate your trust and betray you. And you want to feel like everything is good again. You want to feel like you're moving in the direction of healing as a couple. But the truth is that he's not actually doing anything to change his behavior. He says he's sorry, but what has he actually done to show you that he knows that he has a problem and that he's willing to do the work it takes to change his behavior? Probably nothing. All right, my friends, that was the summary of phase one reattachment. We just went through how this phase shows up in all the different areas of our lives. And if any of this information resonates with you, please be sure to download my free relationship reflection workbook. It's going to help you dive deeper into how each phase is actually impacting your mental health and all of these different areas of your life. As you're working through the workbook and you feel like you need some additional support, I am currently offering free support calls for anyone who needs it. You can visit the link in the description below, fill out a form, and we will be in touch with you. This is a safe space for you to share and unpack what you've been experiencing, and hopefully, we can find some solutions that can help support you on your journey of healing. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more like this. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.